maritime transport is the backbone of international trade as well as the driver of global economic growth. Here in Kenya, close to 93% of all traded goods are transported through the waves. But the sector has undergone tremendous challenges in the last 2 years, starting with the COVID-19 pandemic and now the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Where are we in terms of growth and how are we navigating these uncharted waters? This week on Inside Government, we're talking to Ambassador Nancy Karigithu. She is the Principal Secretary and Special Envoy for Maritime and Blue Economy here in Kenya. She's going to help us with this conversation. Thank you very much indeed, Balozi, for finding time to be with us. And of course, congratulations on your appointment as an ambassador.
Thank you very much, Brian. I'm grateful for this opportunity and I look forward to the conversation.
Very good. You know, the last time we had this conversation was last year when the world was just emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic. How have we managed to weave ourselves out of that crisis so far?
Wow, let me say that we had hardly started recovering from COVID when the Ukraine and Russia conflict started. Unfortunately, both incidents have had a devastating effect on shipping. We know that the pandemic was unexpected, but some of the effects, or rather the effects we had, were not unexpected. Again, impacted on the seafarers because if you look at the global labor supply, Russia plays a major role, and of course that has impacted on the world also. Then also some of the measures that have been taken by countries in the face of the crisis. This has really affected the global supply chain wherever we are. But I think the most important issue or lesson that has come out of it is that the world is all interconnected. And a crisis in one part of the world will affect the entire global, family. And therefore, we must be able to come up with measures looking inward as countries to protect ourselves. And I think one of the biggest lessons that has come out of this is that for any nation, for any government, shipping policies that affect the food supply chain, policies through shipping that affect the energy supply must form part of every government going into the future.
Very well. I know, in the last 2 years, there has been significant interventions, especially we have seen concerted efforts to try and revive the Kenya National Shipping Line, as well as the revival of Kenya Shipyard, that has a mandate of, repairing our ships and as well as constructing our boats. Has this helped by any means?
I think what I would want to say is that the government has really made significant inroads into the revival of the industry. And for this, we want to really applaud and thank His Excellency the President for having that single-minded focus on the blue economy growth. And like we've said before, shipping is so interconnected. It's an ecosystem that feeds from or feeds through so many, interconnected, nodes. So one of the things that happened is having an overarching look on what we need to do, what feeds each other, how the cross-pollination can be created. And therefore, that's why you see all these initiatives coming on board because, for example, we have a port, an international port that services the international shipping industry. We have responsibilities that arise from our being a port state because we serve international shipping as a port, as a coastal state, because shipping being international is regulated through the United Nations Specialized Agency, the International Maritime Organization. And therefore, to make it global and to make it uniform so that we don't have countries deciding what is going to happen within their jurisdiction and conflicting and having to comply with a multiplicity of regulations in one voyage, then it is uniform. So that gives rise to port state jurisdiction, which has responsibilities to the shipping communities, most of them mandatory. Then we've got the flag state responsibilities for ships that are registered in Kenya. Now, when I talk when I say that, it's because when these international ships come, because they need never go back home where they're registered, we have an obligation to ensure that they are safe, they are secure, and also that the interface between the ship itself, through the people on board, the workers, and the port does not harm the other. That's insecurity. But most important also to ensure that the ship, in terms of the cargo, the people on board, and in terms of our marine environment protection, is safe. So what do we need to do? We've got a raft of regulations. For example, Kenya Maritime Authority has to board, has professionals who then board the ship, performing the same duties that national safety, the road, whatever regulator, safety regulator, yeah, NTSA will perform. But this we are doing as an international policeman, if you may say. So if we find that the ship has a problem, the powers to detain are very clearly stated, because we want to ensure that a ship does not leave Kenyan waters and go and pollute in the next port. Now, when we do not provide that vessel with the facilities where she can be repaired, what are we doing? We're keeping her in port, gaining, because she must pay to be there, but then not enabling her to comply. And that's why the shipyard becomes very, very important on that note. Not to mention the fact that there'll be Kenyans, or rather the policies are to ensure that Kenyans also participate in the maritime trade, and there is a lot of scope that we can do. So where are they going to get those ships if we cannot be able to provide for the building and for the repair, but most important, the jobs. The jobs for our youth.
Through partnerships with international shipping lines, KNSL was supposed to enter into agreements with the shipping lines to help in the training of seafarers as well as other workers. Has this ever been implemented?
Jobs are very important for our young people. We have a population that we are told 51% are youth who have a life, they have a long life to make use of their talents. And like we said, there's a limit as to how much you can train or you can absorb them unless we create, scope for them. And therefore, jobs in the maritime industry become very, very critical. What has been the main problem we had in terms of training? The first one is because we've not been able to provide the facilities necessary for the youth to get the legal finish that then enables them to work. Every area has got its regulations in terms of job entry, in terms of skills training, and in terms of continuity of service. I'm a lawyer by profession, and every year, if I'm practicing, I have to renew my certificates. The same in the shipping industry. Those people who work on board ships have a scheme of service, or rather regulations that are meant to ensure that they remain relevant. So they have to revalidate their certificates, they have to keep improving their skills based on the changes in the sector. The most critical is to have training on board a ship. And we are talking of a country that doesn't have ships. So of course, partnerships then become very important in that area, because who will train for you unless you get into those partnerships? We've got the youth, they've got the brains, they've got they're able to be able, they've got the mindset to be able. But then the other most important thing was also reputational. Like I told you earlier, Russia, India, Philippines, China have been the major suppliers of crew in the market. And the industry is also very word of mouthish, reputation. Very, very important. Now, because at some time we lost that chain, the continuity of Kenyans serving on board when we didn't have whitelisting, re-establishing that reputation, getting the Kenyans to display their skills and to be able to be seen by ship owners as a viable source of labor also presented a challenge. And that's why, like you said, the revival of Kenya National Shipping Line became very, very important, because then it became the platform, or should we say the display case, where we display the Kenyans. And I want to say that Kenyans being who they are, they've been able now, if I may say, to be seen for what they are and for the talents they have. And therefore, that's why we've now been able to have conversations with other shipping lines, like the Bahari shipping line, to be able to sample into Kenyans. But training, now we are realizing that the numbers that are needed, we need to really ratchet up the capacity for training that we have.
And you're talking about capacity, and we know there is concerted efforts to re-engineer the Bandari Maritime College, and also we have established the Maritime Training School in Kisumu. How are these two going to help in upscaling the number of crew and seafarers that we can produce in this country?
Okay, we are looking at a multi-pronged approach. Because shipping has got different career paths. For example, you've got the officers, and that's where Russia and Ukraine really cornered the market. Then you've got the ratings, the people who work under those officers. That's in the technical areas in terms of navigation, the people who then become the pilots and the captains of the vessels. Then you've got the engineering side, the people who become responsible for all the engineering on the ship. Technical, they earn a lot of money because the responsibility is immense. But then we also have, and the ratings are in both areas, rating for engines and rating for the deck or navigation. Then you've got the hospitality. The world needs people who will work, let's say as hoteliers, but on those mobile, floating hotels. Those are the cruise ships. So we are looking at training on, hard training in large numbers for both areas. It takes time, it takes a lot of resources, and it needs a lot of partnerships with other nations, because that's how shipping is organized. For you to be able to get employment on board a ship, the country where that ship is registered must have a bilateral or MOU with us, so that our training is up to par. And those are some of the things we are doing. We are seeing, Bandari is is the flagship training institution for this country, the Center of Excellence. Then, like you've mentioned, we've got the Railway Maritime Marine Training School in Kisumu, Kenya Coast Polytechnic, Technical University of Mombasa, and one of the older ones, Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, that has really done us proud in terms of training marine engineers who have proven their mettle when we've sent them on board. And now the reputation of Kenya has begun to grow. Now, you talked of the Ukraine-Russia conflict and the COVID. Whenever something happens in the world like this, whenever a crisis like this happens, there is disruption. And disruption then brings with it opportunities as well as, challenges. And we're seeing that because of COVID, there is an opportunity now for a major shift in terms of the labor, the balance in labor supply.
I know there are about 1.9 million seafarers in the world, where, Russia and Ukraine, they control almost 14% of these numbers. In terms of ourselves as a country, where are we in terms of tapping that market?
Okay, a lot of them are in the cruise industry, and I would say that we may have no less than, from the time we had the COVID, and Kenya, when the COVID pandemic started and Kenyans were coming back, we realized that we had a lot of Kenyans that had gone on their own to, to work in the cruise ships, like around 600 who we brought back on our own. In terms of the arrangements that government has been making, if we count the cruise shipping and the technical areas, we could talk of 1,000 in the international job market.
This is a subject that you have always discussed. I mean, that, when you look at the world, there are more than 130,000 ships out there. And yet as a country which prides itself as a maritime country, with a major coastline and rivers and lakes, what are we doing to ensure that we also become part of this exclusive club of countries that own ships? Whereby our neighbors here in Ethiopia, has about 11 ships.
Like I said initially, the way the shipping is, or rather the way shipping impacts every fabric of society, every fabric of the life we know as Kenyans. For example, sitting here, everything around us has been touched by shipping, including the clothes we are wearing today. Either as raw materials being transported from from the producing country to the final manufacturer, everything is touched by shipping. And from the two crises that we have seen, it's going to, shipping is going to continue to impact on the fabric of our society. And therefore, like I said, policies that impact on shipping must be part of government, any government that cares for its people. And like I said, one of the things that this government has done is integrate as much as possible shipping into everything we do. And that was the reason why the shipping, or the blue economy, the maritime sector, was incorporated into one of the 8 sectors under the economic pillar of Vision 2030, so that whatever we are doing as a country then takes, or rather reflects on what shipping will do, or how it will be impacted by the maritime sector. And that's why in terms of fiscal and regulatory policies, and this cut across so many sectors of our, of our economy, including health, now that COVID has shown us that everybody must come on board to help us navigate this area. And that has also informed the initiatives that you have mentioned, the shipbuilding. As a country with all those endowments you've said, we cannot continue selling jobs, exporting jobs, which our young people could do. And therefore, issues like ship repair being able to be done here. When those ships come here, ships will schedule their repairs, their minor repairs, to be done in a port where those facilities are. And those are jobs. So as the cargo is being offloaded and loaded, somebody is chipping away, somebody is painting, somebody is doing, the repairs that are needed have come, and we've got tax policies that allow the goods, the spare parts to come straight from the airport into the port, and it's fitted and it's gone. Those are some of the issues that we are looking at, because they mean jobs that stay right here in Kenya, but most important also skills transfer for our young people. If you look at a country like Korea, you will discover that Korea industrialized on the basis of seafarers who came back from sea, because that's one of the first economic activities that they structured on, labor export. When they trained so much for the Japanese market, and those people now, because the training is very, very, very detailed. You're talking of having an engineer on board who is not only a mechanical engineer, he's an electronics engineer, he's also an electronic engineer. He looks after the cooling equipment, he looks after the heating equipment, because all those are needed. When somebody like that comes on shore, you begin to see into the future of the kind of country Kenya will be when our young people are so well trained and they've gone and had a world view and they are coming back. They are the people who we look up to set up those industries and also be able to make Kenya what it is. The people we are taking for jobs in the cruise industry. Look at our pristine beaches, clean. Diani Beach getting world accolades year in, year out, the best beach in the world. And yet you come here, warm weather all year round, warm water all year round, 365 plus days a year. Then connectivity, which is very good between the port and the airports. You begin to see the potential. Then you look at the distance between the port and the world, the game park, within 2 hours of landing. You can be in a game park. Now, water transport that has not developed, because when you look at the coastal cities, they're all connected by road, yet water transport would be so much cheaper, so much quicker, so much hassle-free, more efficient. So we're looking at these people when they are properly trained and empowered, because they'll be making good money. Those are the kind of people we're looking at who will then, because they understand the sector, they'll come and invest in those, day cruises. They'll come and invest in water transport, water sports.
And so the multiplying effect becomes much bigger. I was looking at the international chambers of shipping, and they were talking about in the next 4 or 5 years, by the year 2026, they're talking about there will be a shortage of about almost 95,000 seafarers. Are we well positioned to tap into these emerging opportunities?
Those are the structures we are laying now. We may not see the results today, tomorrow, because training is prescribed and takes time. But I see no reason why Kenyans should not tap into this sector. One of the things that has emerged lately is getting inquiries or exploring how we can partner with some of those lines to be able for them to train and recruit, having a pipeline of trainees who go straight into the job market.
Like the Philippines.
Like the Philippines. And there is no reason why we can't do that, because Kenyans are clever. And one of the major issues going for us, and I've said before and been vilified for it, one major advantage going for us is that we speak English well. English is a maritime language, and we speak without an accent.
Before we wind it up, the contribution of shipping and maritime industry to Kenya's GDP is about 5 to 6% every year. Do you see this number going up or down when you look at the geopolitics affecting this critical industry?
Of course, that's why. That's why we are making all these efforts, and that's why we are investing all this time and money in the sector, because of the potential that it has. You said it yourself that Ethiopia has a shipping line. And that's the reason, these are part of the reasons that Ethiopia decided, despite being landlocked, to invest in a shipping line and be able to control the prices of shipping. The same way with the Seychelles. Seychelles decided, and this was from the Seychelles Petroleum Company, CPEC. What did they do? They decided that we will always be a net importer of fuel, and we want to determine the price of that fuel reaching our market. And therefore they started a shipping line in shipping you don't even have to have, a ship. There are those mechanisms, the charter. You can do a time charter, you can do a voyage charter, but you're in control of the logistics yourself. You can also do a boat charter. So you hire the ship and kit it with your own, including your own seafarers. And we've seen these shipping lines grow. Today, the Seychelles not only imports on its own shipping line all the fuel that is used by the fisheries industry, for their motor vehicle industry, for their water leisure industry. Not only do they import that, but they are able to charter their ships now because it's grown. And they're able to charter their ships to other people who need them. But most important, they are able to train their young people. None of them lacks sea time. The same with Ethiopia. Ethiopian seafarers go from graduation class to the job market because the sea time is readily available, and they've been able to acquire that mandatory component in the course of their training. The difference is this. You ship through the Ethiopians ship through the Ethiopian shipping line. You know what it means? It means that all of us as a country, for example, I'll give the case of motor vehicles. when the Ethiopians are buying through their, or rather importing motor vehicles through the Ethiopia shipping lines, it means that somebody took charge and control, or rather was able to influence the logistics chain. What happens in Kenya? If a ship docks in Mombasa with, let's say, how many? 900 vehicles? All of those vehicles were shipped by Kimani, the next person, one vehicle, two vehicles, and you did it, or rather they all did it individually. So the economies of scale did not affect them. And this is what we need to do ourselves to be able to reduce and control foreign exchange transfer, because if you're paying in Kenya, you pay in shillings, the money remains here.
And this has been your pet subject, since your days at the Kenya Maritime Authority. How comes after so many years, is it that buying a ship is expensive? Is it the process that is laborious, or we don't have any will to buy a ship?
I think it's changing. We've got Kenyans now buying ships, particularly fishing vessels. But I think a lot of it is because it's venturing into the unknown, and that's why I said, if you have people who understand, who've worked, who've trained, who've worked, and then they're coming back home, of course, then that begins to be not a very foreign concept or notion. So awareness becomes very important. Also having a population that has interacted with shipping. For example, I'll give you an example of one of the seafarers we recruited to send on the cruise ship. And the parents were telling us how their lives have changed, because now children come home from school in the evening asking, "Mjomba yuko wapi leo?" And so the grandfather had to buy a chart, a map of the world, and get tack pins, because the son who is at sea is moving from Singapore, because the ship is in Singapore, to Japan, to another country. So he's able to show the children, this is Mjomba yuko hapa leo. Now think of the mindset of that child. It's changed forever, because they've grown interacting and exposed to the maritime industry. I got this because Mjomba was at sea, and these are the photos of where he's working. So work in progress, but I think the journey has started.
Before I let you go, tell us this. I mean, where do you see this sector going, after the COVID dust has settled, the surging cost of fuel, and of course the Ukrainian-Russia crisis, is brought to a close?
One of the things that the crisis, both COVID and the Russia crisis, has shown us is that shipping is indispensable to the world. We cannot do without shipping. If you look in terms of air, we talked of 92%, for example, in Kenya, for our international trade. Air occupies a marginal 0.2%, and of course it's more expensive. So I don't see anywhere, any time, that shipping will not be necessary for our lives. Then the other thing that it has shown is that shipping is resilient, and therefore it will rebound. The impact will be felt, but the season will end, and will be other entrants. That's where we hope to be ourselves.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador, for joining us on the Inside Government this week, and of course to help us understand where we, and of course what are we doing to develop our maritime and shipping industry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Well,
we've been talking to Ambassador Nancy Karigithu. She is the Principal Secretary and Special Envoy for Maritime and Blue Economy, joining us on this week's episode of Inside Government to help us understand what we are doing as a country to tap the immense resources within the shipping and maritime sector. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.